After I was released from the hospital, I asked my family for a ride home. Instead, my son told me to take a bus, and his wife cut deeper, saying life was better without me. I felt abandoned, smaller than ever. That night, my face appeared on television, smiling though my heart trembled. Suddenly, their power dissolved into panic. 72 calls lit my phone. I watched, unmoved. I needed no words. Silence itself was powerful enough. If you want to see how this plays out, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. The recovery room smelled like industrial bleach mixed with that peculiar hospital scent that clings to your clothes long after you leave. My knee throbbed beneath the fresh bandages, a deep ache that pulsed with each heartbeat. The nurse wheeled in the standard discharge cart with my belongings in a clear plastic bag. My worn leather wallet sat on top, the same one I'd carried for 20 years, stuffed with old receipts and things I'd never gotten around to using. She helped me into the wheelchair with practiced efficiency, her hands gentle but impersonal. "Is your ride here yet, Mr. Frank?" she asked, glancing at the clock that showed 3:15 in the afternoon. The question hung in the air like smoke from a burnt dinner, acrid and unwelcome. I pulled out my phone, its screen cracked in the corner from a drop last month that I'd never bothered to fix. The family group chat stared back at me. The last message from 3 days ago when Michael, my son, had posted a photo of his new office view. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed, though whether from the lingering effects of anesthesia or simple apprehension, I couldn't say. "Surgery went well. Ready for pickup. Who can drive me home?" The message showed as delivered immediately, those little check marks turning blue to indicate it had been read. Michael's response came within seconds, as if he'd been waiting with his finger poised over the keyboard. "I'm busy. Take a bus." No punctuation beyond the comma, no explanation, just 5 words that felt like ice water in my veins. Before I could even process what I was reading, Jennifer's message popped up below his. "Stay there. Life is better without you." The casual cruelty of it made my breath catch in my throat. The nurse pretended not to notice as I stared at the screen, but I saw her eyes flick away with that particular brand of professional discretion healthcare workers perfectly. The wheelchair squeaked against the linoleum as she pushed me toward the lobby, past rooms where other patients had families gathered around their beds, bringing flowers and balloons and those absurd get-well cards with cartoon animals. The February afternoon light streamed through the tall windows, harsh and unforgiving, highlighting every scuff mark on the floor and every wrinkle in my day-old clothes. I tried Michael's number directly, listening to it ring 4 times before going to voicemail. His recorded voice, cheerful and professional, asked me to leave a message. I hung up without speaking. The lobby bustled with the usual hospital traffic, visitors checking in at the desk, medical staff rushing between wings, a small child crying near the gift shop while his mother fumbled with her purse. I sat in my wheelchair near the automatic doors, watching them slide open and closed with each passing person, letting in bursts of cool California air that carried the faint smell of car exhaust and distant rain. 20 minutes passed, then 30, each tick of the large wall clock seeming to echo in my chest. "Frank? Frank, is that you?" The familiar voice made me turn, and there stood Robert, my neighbor of 15 years, carrying a small potted succulent that looked absurdly cheerful in the sterile environment. His weathered face showed genuine concern as he took in my situation. The wheelchair, the absence of anyone else. "Just had hip surgery down the hall," he explained, gesturing vaguely toward the orthopedic wing. "Visiting my brother-in-law. Where's Michael?" The lie formed automatically on my lips, but something in Robert's eyes stopped me. Maybe it was the way he'd already started wheeling me toward the exit without being asked, or maybe I was just too tired to pretend. "He's busy," I said simply, the words tasting bitter. Robert didn't press, just nodded, and helped me into his old Ford pickup, the one he'd been threatening to replace for the past 5 years. The leather seats were cracked but comfortable, and the cab smelled like coffee and WD-40. During the drive home, Robert kept the radio on low, some classic rock station playing songs from when we were young and believed the world was basically fair. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer platitudes, just drove with the careful attention of someone who understood that sometimes silence was the kindest gift you could give. As we pulled into my driveway, he finally spoke. "Family can surprise you sometimes," he said, his tone neutral enough that I couldn't tell if he meant for better or worse. "You need anything? You call me. Day or night." After he left, I stood in my empty kitchen, leaning heavily on the walker the hospital had insisted I use for the first week. The house felt different somehow, as if the very walls had absorbed my family's rejection and reflected it back at me. I was reaching for a glass of water when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Turn on TV at 8 p.m. tonight. You'll want to see this." The kitchen clock read 4:30 when I finally managed to lower myself onto the living room couch, my knee protesting every inch of the descent. The cushions, which had once seemed too firm when Ellen picked them out, now felt like clouds that might swallow me whole if I wasn't careful. The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, creating parallel lines of light and shadow across the hardwood floor that my wife, Ellen, had insisted on installing 10 years ago. She'd spent weeks looking at samples, holding them up to the light at different times of day, driving me half crazy with her indecision. She'd been right, of course. She usually was about those kinds of things. The carpet would have been impossible to navigate with this walker, though she couldn't have known that when she made the decision. Cancer took her 3 years before my knee gave out. Long before she could have imagined me hobbling around our home alone, counting the steps between furniture pieces like islands in a sea of polished oak. I remembered that day at the funeral home with terrible clarity. The way the air conditioning had been set too high, making everyone shiver despite the June heat outside. Michael had gripped my shoulder as we stood beside her casket, his fingers digging in just a little too hard, as if he could anchor himself to the world through me. His eyes had been red-rimmed, but determined when he made his promise. "You'll never be alone, Dad," he'd said, his voice thick with emotion that seemed genuine at the time. "Jennifer and I will make sure of that. You're moving in with us if you need to, no arguments. Mom would want us to take care of each other." Jennifer had nodded along, her hand on his arm, playing the role of supportive wife with an actress's precision. She'd even managed to squeeze out a tear, though I noticed she was careful not to smudge her mascara. Even then, something about her sympathy had felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script titled, "How to Behave at Your Mother-in-Law's Funeral." The photo albums sat on the coffee table where I'd left them last week. Before the surgery, when I'd been feeling sentimental and foolish, the leather covers were worn soft from years of handling, and the plastic pages crackled when turned. Pictures of Michael at various ages stared up at me, gap-toothed at 7 with his first baseball trophy, sullen at 14 with that ridiculous haircut he'd insisted on, proud in his cap and gown at 22 with Ellen and me flanking him like bookends. There was one of all 3 of us at Disneyland, Ellen laughing as Michael, then 10, tried to wear both a Mickey Mouse hat and a Goofy hat at the same time. We'd driven down to Anaheim in the middle of summer, the temperatures soaring into the 90s, the asphalt practically melting under our feet. But Michael had insisted on riding Space Mountain 6 times in a row, and Ellen had indulged him even though she got motion sick on the 3rd ride. That was the kind of mother she'd been, always putting his joy before her comfort. My phone vibrated against the coffee table, rattling against the glass surface with an urgency that seemed almost angry. I saw Michael's name in the family chat. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest like a bird trying to escape through a closed window, beating its wings against the invisible barrier. I watched for a full minute, imagining the words he might be choosing and discarding. An apology? An explanation? Finally, nothing came through at all. The dots disappeared for good, leaving just the harsh reality of his earlier message. Jennifer, however, had no such hesitation. She'd posted a photo of herself. Her smile was wide and genuine in a way I'd never seen when she was around me. "Finally some peace," the caption read, followed by a string of emoji hearts and champagne glasses that seemed to mock my isolation. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I sat here, barely able to stand without assistance, my knee throbbing with each heartbeat, she was celebrating my absence with a shopping spree that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. The timestamp showed she'd posted it 20 minutes ago, right around the time I was struggling to get from Robert's truck to my front door, gripping the railing like my life depended on it. I wondered if Michael was with her, if they were toasting their freedom with overpriced lattes, while I faced the prospect of heating up a can of soup for dinner. The thought of them laughing together, relief in their voices as they discussed how much easier life would be without my needs interfering with their plans, made my stomach turn. I switched on the television to drown out the silence that pressed against my eardrums like water pressure at depth. The remote was sticky with something I couldn't identify, probably from the last time I'd eaten dinner in front of the TV, a habit Ellen had always gently discouraged. I flipped aimlessly through channels, each one a window into a world that felt increasingly foreign. Game shows where people screamed with joy over winning appliances they probably didn't need, cooking competitions where judges critiqued dishes I couldn't pronounce, a documentary about whales that made me think of Ellen and how she'd always wanted to go whale watching, but we'd never gotten around to it. Nothing could hold my attention for more than a few seconds. The local news was running a segment about rising housing costs in the Bay Area. The anchor's voice, a practiced blend of concern and detachment, as if the crisis was happening on another planet. 7:45. The mysterious text had said 8 o'clock. Against my better judgment, curiosity won out like it always did. The remote felt heavy in my hand as I changed the channel, the buttons worn smooth from years of use. A commercial for a local car dealership was just ending. The owner's daughter promising unbeatable President's Day deals in a voice that could strip paint. Her smile was so wide it looked painful, and I wondered if her face hurt at the end of the day from all that grinning. Then the announcement music began, that familiar jingle that had played every Thursday and Friday night for as long as I could remember. The studio was garishly bright, all purple and gold with spinning graphics that probably triggered seizures in susceptible viewers. The host, a man in a red vest who seemed personally offended by the concept of aging naturally, flashed his veneer white teeth at the camera. His hair was a color that didn't exist in nature, somewhere between brown and orange, styled into a helmet that probably could withstand hurricane-force winds. "Good evening, California. It's time for tonight's special announcement. We have a rollover jackpot that's been building since New Year's Eve, and someone out there is about to become very, very wealthy." His enthusiasm felt forced, like he'd rather be anywhere else, but was contractually obligated to seem thrilled. The California Mega Millions drawing from January 16th has produced a single winning ticket, sold right here in Riverside County. The jackpot? $20 million. He paused for effect, letting the number sink in while graphics of money rained down on the screen behind him. My hand froze halfway to the water glass I'd been reaching for, suspended in mid-air like I'd been turned to stone. January 16th. That date rang in my head like a church bell, reverberating through my skull. The host continued his patter, building up to the number reveal with the theatrical flair of a magician about to pull a rabbit from a hat. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The winning numbers for the $20 million jackpot are... He paused again, and I wanted to reach through the screen and shake him. When he finally read them out, each number seemed to hang in the air, crystallizing into something solid and undeniable. 5, 17, 23, 31, 42, and the mega number, 15. Those were my numbers. Ellen's birthday on the 5th of May, our anniversary on the 17th of June, Michael's birthday on the 23rd of October, the 31st of December when we bought our first house, the 42 years we'd been married when she died, and 15, the date we'd first met at a college mixer in 1978. I'd been playing the same combination for 20 years, a small ritual that connected me to better times. Every week, rain or shine, whether I could afford it or not. The ticket machine at the gas station knew my order by heart, the elderly clerk always joking that one day my loyalty would pay off, that the universe owed me for my persistence. My phone rang, Michael's name lighting up the screen with a photo from last Christmas, him smiling in front of the tree we'd decorated together. For a moment, I considered answering, hearing what excuse he'd manufacture now that enough time had passed for guilt to set in. But my finger found the decline button instead, the small act of defiance, sending a tiny thrill through me. Let him wonder. Let him sit with the discomfort of not knowing if I'd made it home safely. The phone immediately rang again, and again I sent it to voicemail. The liberation in that small act of defiance surprised me, like discovering you could breathe underwater all along. But where was the ticket? I bought it 3 weeks ago, January 15th, the day before the drawing, at the Riverside gas station where I always stopped for coffee before doctor's appointments. The memory was vivid. I'd been nervous about the upcoming surgery, my hand shaking slightly as I filled out the pay slip. The clerk, an older gentleman who'd been there as long as I could remember, had wished me luck, not knowing whether he meant for the or the operation. "Maybe this will be your week, Frank," he'd said with a wink. That ticket had to be somewhere, tucked away in one of my pockets, or maybe in the wallet with all those receipts I never threw away. My hands trembled as I reached for the worn leather wallet on the coffee table, the same one that had seemed so unremarkable just hours ago in the hospital. The living room had grown darker while I'd been watching television, shadows creeping across the floor like spilled ink. I flicked on the table lamp, its warm yellow light creating a small circle of illumination in the growing dusk. The wallet felt heavier than usual, weighted with possibility, as I opened it and began searching through the accumulated detritus of daily life. Old receipts fluttered onto the coffee table like autumn leaves, each one a small memory of errands run and obligations met. There were receipts from the pharmacy for my pre-surgery medications, the amounts making me wince even now. A receipt from the grocery store dated 2 weeks ago, when I'd stocked up on easy-to-prepare meals, knowing I'd be alone during recovery. Another from the hardware store where I'd bought grab bars for the bathroom, installing them myself despite Michael's half-hearted offer to help that had never materialized. Behind them all, tucked into the deepest recesses of the wallet's bill compartment, I found more papers. A business card from my orthopedic surgeon, with my surgery date written on the back in his illegible scrawl. An appointment reminder card for a follow-up I'd probably miss. And there, wedged behind a faded photo of Ellen that I'd carried for 40 years, was a small slip of paper with the California logo. The ticket was slightly creased at one corner, a bit worn from being pressed against the photo for 3 weeks. But the numbers were still clearly visible. January 15th, 2025, printed in that distinctive purple ink they used. Riverside Gas and Food Mart, store number 47291. My hand shook harder now as I held the ticket up to the light, comparing each number to what I'd written down from the television announcement. 5. Yes, there it was in the first position. 17. Second position, perfect match. 23, 31, 42. Each number aligned perfectly with my selection, like tumblers falling into place in a lock. And the mega number, 15, circled at the bottom of the ticket. The date Ellen and I had first met, now worth $20 million. I checked again, then a third time, then a fourth, my finger tracking across each number while my heart hammered against my ribs like a caged bird. Part of me expected the numbers to change if I looked away, some cruel trick of failing eyesight or wishful thinking, but they remained constant, Immutable, a mathematical certainty in a world that had felt increasingly uncertain since Ellen's death. I reached for my reading glasses, the ones I pretended I didn't really need, and examined the ticket again under the magnifying glass I kept in the side table drawer. The numbers didn't change. This wasn't a dream or a hallucination brought on by pain medication. This was real. The doorbell rang, startling me so badly I nearly dropped the ticket. Through the peephole, I could see Robert standing on my porch, holding what looked like a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. I quickly folded the ticket and slipped it back behind Ellen's photo before opening the door. "Thought you might be hungry," he said. His weathered face creased with concern. "My wife made her famous lasagna. She always makes too much. You know how she is." The dish was still warm in my hands, the smell of garlic and tomato sauce making my stomach growl. I'd forgotten about dinner entirely, my can of soup sitting unopened on the kitchen counter. "Robert," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, "I need you to look at something for me. I need to make sure I'm not losing my mind." His expression shifted from concern to curiosity as I led him to the living room, my walker clicking against the hardwood with each step. I retrieved the ticket and handed it to him along with the paper where I'd written the winning numbers. He pulled out his own reading glasses, a pair of cheap drugstore readers held together with electrical tape, and studied both papers carefully. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the tick of the mantel clock and the distant sound of a dog barking somewhere in the neighborhood. "Jesus Christ, Frank," he whispered finally, sinking onto the couch like his legs had given out. "This is real. You won. You actually won." He pulled out his phone and navigated to the California website with surprising dexterity for a man who claimed to hate technology. The winning numbers were displayed in a bright banner across the top of the page, along with the prize amount and the fact that the winning ticket had been sold in Riverside County. "It says here, you have until January 16th next year to claim it. That's 11 months from now. The ticket's a little beat up, but the barcode is clear. They can verify it with that." The room seemed to spin slightly as the reality sank in. $20 million. Even after taxes, taking the lump sum, it would be more money than I'd ever dreamed of having. Enough to pay off the mortgage, cover any medical expenses, travel to all those places Ellen and I had planned to visit. Enough to never have to depend on anyone again, especially not a son who couldn't be bothered to pick up his father from the hospital. "What do I do?" I asked Robert, my voice barely above a whisper. "How does this even work?" "First thing tomorrow, you call the California district office," he said, his practical nature taking over. "There's one in San Diego, about 90 minutes south. They'll set up an appointment for you to come in and claim the prize. You'll need identification, the ticket, and probably your social security card. They'll verify everything and start the process." He paused, studying my face carefully. "You planning to tell Michael?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Before I could answer, my phone began buzzing on the coffee table. Not ringing, just vibrating with incoming texts, one after another in rapid succession. I picked it up to find 17 missed calls from Michael and 23 from Jennifer. The family group chat was exploding with messages. Michael: "Dad, please call me." Jennifer: "We need to talk about earlier." Michael again: "I'm sorry about what I said. I was stressed about work." Jennifer: "That came out wrong. You know we care about you." The messages kept coming, each one more conciliatory than the last. But something felt off about the timing. They'd had hours to apologize if they'd really felt bad about abandoning me. Why now? Just minutes after the announcement. "I think I'll wait to tell them," I said finally, making a decision that felt both wrong and completely justified. "Let them wonder for a while." Robert nodded, understanding without judgment. He'd lived next door long enough to see the dynamics at play, the way Jennifer's sweetness curdled into something else when she thought no one was watching, the way Michael had gradually distanced himself since the wedding 5 years ago. "Our attorney can handle any paperwork if there are complications," I remembered Jennifer saying once, When we'd discussed my will, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp, already calculating inheritance values. Robert stayed for another hour, helping me eat some of the lasagna and making sure I had everything I needed for the night. We didn't talk about the ticket again, but I could see him glancing at me occasionally, as if making sure I was handling the shock. After he left, I sat in the quiet house, the ticket back in my wallet, safely tucked behind Ellen's photo, where it belonged. The phone continued to buzz intermittently, but I didn't pick it up. Let them wonder. Let them stew in whatever guilt or concern had finally motivated them to reach out. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, I just wanted to sit with the knowledge that I'd won, that for once in my life, luck had broken in my favor. I turned off the television and made my way slowly to the bedroom, each step careful and deliberate with the walker. The ticket seemed to pulse in my wallet like a heartbeat, a secret that would transform everything once revealed. As I settled into bed, my knee propped on pillows the way the physical therapist had shown me, I thought about Ellen and what she would have said. She'd probably laugh at the irony of it all, winning millions with the numbers that represented our life together, just when I needed it most. The phone on my nightstand lit up again with another call from Michael. This time, I didn't even look at it before it went to voicemail. The pounding on my front door started at 6:13 in the morning, according to the red digits on my alarm clock. It wasn't knocking so much as hammering, the kind of desperate beating that suggested either an emergency or someone who didn't care about social conventions. The doorbell rang continuously, a shrill electronic shriek that pierced through my pain medication fog. I struggled out of bed, my knee screaming in protest as I reached for the walker. Each step toward the front door felt like a small eternity, the pounding growing more insistent with each passing second. Through the peephole, I could see Michael and Jennifer standing on my porch. My son's face was pale, almost gray in the early morning light, with dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, sticking up at odd angles like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. Jennifer stood beside him, her makeup hastily applied, mascara slightly smudged under one eye. She was wearing what looked like yesterday's clothes, the same outfit from her shopping photo, now wrinkled and somewhat less triumphant. They both had the wild-eyed look of people who'd received shocking news and hadn't quite processed it yet. I opened the door, but kept the chain on, peering through the gap at my son and his wife. "Dad, thank God," Michael said, his voice hoarse. "We've been trying to reach you all night. Why didn't you answer your phone?" The question was almost laughable considering he'd ignored my calls from the hospital just yesterday. "We need to talk to you. It's important. Can we come in?" His eyes darted past me into the house, as if searching for something or someone. "Important," I repeated, keeping my voice neutral despite the anger bubbling in my chest. "Like picking up your father from the hospital after surgery? That kind of important?" The words came out sharper than I'd intended, but I didn't try to soften them. Michael flinched as if I'd slapped him, while Jennifer's expression hardened into something defensive. "Or is this about something else entirely? Something you might have seen online, perhaps?" Jennifer pushed forward, her voice taking on that false sweetness she used when she wanted something. "Frank, there's been a misunderstanding. What we said yesterday, it came out all wrong. We were both having terrible days. Michael's been dealing with some financial stress at work, and I was overwhelmed with everything. We never meant to hurt you." Her explanation might have been more convincing if she hadn't been celebrating with shopping bags just hours after abandoning me. "Family supports each other through difficult times. We should all sit down and talk about this like adults." I unhooked the chain and opened the door wider, leaning heavily on my walker. They practically rushed inside, their eyes scanning the living room as if expecting to find evidence of something. Evidence of what? I wondered. My ticket? How could they possibly know? "Financial stress?" I asked, focusing on Michael. "What kind of financial stress? You just got that promotion 6 months ago, the one you said would set you up for life." My son's face crumbled slightly, and for a moment he looked like the little boy who'd once confessed to breaking Ellen's favorite vase. "Dad, I made some bad investments," he admitted, sinking onto the couch without being invited. "Really bad ones. I put everything into a startup that was supposed to revolutionize financial technology. The founder had connections, references, everything checked out. But it was all a scam. They disappeared with everyone's money 3 weeks ago." His hands shook as he rubbed his face. "I owe $800,000. The investment was leveraged, and now the banks are calling in the loans. If I can't pay, I'll lose everything. The house, the cars, my reputation in the industry, everything." The number hung in this air like a physical presence. $800,000. More money than I'd made in 20 years of working at the paper mill before retirement. Jennifer sat beside him, her hand on his arm, but I noticed she kept glancing at me with a calculating expression. "That's why we need to talk about family assets," she said, her voice taking on a business-like tone. "About planning for the future and making sure we're all taken care of. Your insurance policies, your savings, the house equity. We should have a complete picture of the family's financial situation." Before I could respond, we heard voices outside. Several of my neighbors had apparently noticed the early morning commotion and emerged from their houses. Through the window, I could see the woman from across the street pretending to water her plants while obviously watching my house. The couple from 2 doors down were walking their dog unusually slowly, their path taking them right past my driveway. Robert had come out to get his newspaper and stood at the edge of his lawn, ready to intervene if needed. "Why are the neighbors out?" Jennifer asked, her voice rising with irritation. "Did you tell them something? What have you been saying about us?" Her mask was slipping now, the false concern giving way to her true nature. The woman who'd told me life was better without me was showing through the cracks in her performance. "This is a private family matter. We don't need the whole neighborhood involved in our business. You made it public when you left me stranded at the hospital," I said, pulling out my phone. "Would you like to see the messages again? The ones where you told me to take a bus? Where you said life was better without me?" I'd taken screenshots of everything, a habit Ellen had taught me years ago. "Always document everything," she'd said. "You never know when you'll need proof." I held up the phone, showing them their own words. "These messages? The ones you sent while I was sitting in a wheelchair, wondering how I'd get home?" Michael's face went even paler, if that was possible. "Dad, I already apologized for that. We both did. It was a mistake, a moment of frustration. You can't hold that against us forever." But his protest sounded hollow, especially with Jennifer sitting right there, her shopping bags probably still in their car. "We're family. Family forgives each other. Family takes care of each other. Like you took care of me yesterday?" I asked. "Like you've taken care of me since your mother died? When was the last time you visited before you needed something? When was the last time you called just to see how I was doing?" The questions hung in the air, unanswered because we all knew the truth. Their visits had become increasingly rare, always coinciding with birthdays or holidays when gifts might be expected, or when they needed something signed or notarized. The doorbell rang, interrupting our confrontation. Through the window, I could see more neighbors had gathered, their curiosity overcoming their politeness. Someone was definitely recording with their phone. The scene was becoming increasingly public, which seemed to agitate Jennifer even more. "We know about the—" she blurted out suddenly, her composure finally cracking completely. "Everyone knows. It's all over social media. Riverside County, $20 million. Someone in this neighborhood." So that was it. They'd put the pieces together, or thought they had. The timing of their sudden concern made perfect sense now. "And you assumed it was me?" I asked, keeping my expression neutral. "Based on what? A vague social media post?" But even as I denied it, I could see they were certain. The desperation in their eyes wasn't just about suspicion. It was about absolute conviction that their meal ticket had just come in. "Dad, please," Michael said, and for the first time since he'd arrived, I heard genuine emotion in his voice. Not love or concern, but raw, naked need. If you have that money, you could save us. You could save your son from complete ruin. Isn't that what parents do? Isn't that what Mom would want?" He played his last card, invoking Ellen's memory, knowing how much it would affect me. "Your mother," I said slowly, "would be ashamed of how you treated me yesterday. She would be heartbroken to know that her son left his father stranded after surgery. She would be disgusted by the message your wife sent, celebrating my absence." I looked directly at Jennifer as I spoke. "And she would tell me to be very careful about enabling your poor decisions and rewarding your cruelty." Jennifer stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger. "We know where you keep your important papers, Dad," she said, the last word dripping with sarcasm. "We know about the safe in your bedroom closet. We know about the filing cabinet in the garage. If you have that ticket, we'll find out. One way or another, we'll find out." It was a threat, thinly veiled but unmistakable, and she'd said it loud enough that I was sure the neighbors could hear through the still open door. The California District Office in San Diego sat in a modern building near the downtown area, glass and steel reflecting the morning sun. I'd taken an early morning Uber for the 90-minute drive, my knee still too tender for that much driving. The driver had been mercifully quiet after my monosyllabic responses to his initial attempts at conversation. The February morning was crisp and clear, one of those perfect Southern California days that made the rest of the country envious. Palm trees swayed gently in the coastal breeze as we pulled up to the office complex. The lobby was smaller than I'd expected, with motivational posters about playing responsibly and a wall covered in photographs of previous winners holding those oversized checks. Their smiles all looked the same, a mixture of disbelief and joy that I suspected was now reflected on my own face. Margaret, the official who'd spoken to me on the phone, met me at the security checkpoint. She was younger than her voice had suggested, perhaps 40, with kind eyes and an efficient manner that put me at ease. "Mr. Patterson, we've been expecting you," she said, leading me through a series of security doors. "Congratulations on your win. This must be quite overwhelming." The verification room was bright and sterile, somewhere between a clinic and a bank vault. Margaret slid a small scanner from a drawer and took my ticket with surprising care. "It's a little worn," she said, noticing the crease in the corner and the faded ink from too much time pressed against other papers. "Happens all the time. People stuff tickets into pockets, wallets, glove boxes. As long as it scans, you're good." The machine chirped once, cheerful and quick, and her screen lit up. She looked back at me, her smile widening. "Valid ticket, January 16th, Mega Millions. All 6 numbers. Congratulations, Mr. Patterson. You just became our newest multimillionaire." The next hour drifted past in a haze. Margaret guided me through the essentials, keeping her words plain and steady. "The process takes a little time, usually weeks, not days," she said. "After taxes, that's about $12 million. My hand shook as I signed, though I couldn't tell if it was the knee that still hadn't healed or the weight of the moment. When she set her tablet aside, her voice shifted. "Now, about publicity. California requires us to release your name and the city where you bought the ticket. Beyond that, we can protect much of your privacy. Some winners step into the spotlight, some prefer to stay quiet. That's your choice." Her words pulled me back to the morning. Michael and Jennifer's visit, their desperation dressed up as concern, Jennifer's veiled threats. And I thought about the neighbors, too. The ones who saw it all, who watched them abandon me when I needed help, and then return when they caught the scent of money. "I want to do the full publicity," I said firmly. "Media interviews, the whole thing. I want everyone to know exactly what happened." Margaret raised an eyebrow, but nodded, making notes on her tablet. Within minutes, she'd arranged for a reporter from Channel 7, the same station that had announced the winning numbers. The reporter, a young man with perfectly styled hair and an eager smile, arrived within the hour with a small camera crew. They set up in a conference room, adjusting lights and checking sound levels with the efficiency of people who did this every day. "So, Mr. Patterson," the reporter began once the cameras were rolling, "tell us about the moment you realized you'd won $20 million. His voice had that particular broadcast quality, somehow both intimate and performative. I thought carefully about my answer, very aware that Michael and Jennifer would likely see this, along with everyone else in Riverside County who watched the evening news. I was recovering from knee surgery, I said, looking directly into the camera. I'd just gotten home from the hospital, actually. Alone. Some people showed their true colors when I needed them most. And ironically, that's when my luck changed. The reporter's eyes lit up, sensing there was more to the story. But I didn't elaborate. Let people draw their own conclusions. Let Michael and Jennifer wonder exactly how much I was willing to say publicly. The interview continued for another 10 minutes, with questions about what I planned to do with the money and how it felt to win. I kept my answers vague, but positive, mentioning plans to support local charities and help people in genuine need. Family? The reporter asked, clearly fishing for drama. Will you be sharing your good fortune with your family? I paused, just long enough to make the silence noticeable. I'll be very thoughtful about who I help, I said finally. Money has a way of revealing people's true character. I've recently learned some valuable lessons about that. After the interview wrapped and the crew packed up their equipment, Margaret walked me back to the lobby. She handed me a folder with all the paperwork and documentation I'd need. The segment will air tonight at 6 and probably again at 11, she said. Your check will be ready in about 6 weeks. Are you prepared for how this might change things? I thought about her question as I waited for my Uber back to Riverside. She had no idea how much things had already changed. The driver for the return trip was equally quiet, letting me stare out the window at the passing landscape while I processed everything that had happened. I arrived home just after 3 in the afternoon to find my front door slightly ajar. My blood ran cold as I pushed it open carefully, my walker making too much noise for any attempt at stealth. The living room looked normal at first glance, but small things were off. The cushions on the couch were askew, as if someone had lifted them to look underneath. The magazines on the coffee table had been moved, their careful arrangement disturbed. Someone had been here, searching for something. My bedroom told the same story. The closet door was open, and though nothing was obviously missing, I could tell someone had rifled through the clothes and checked the shelf above. The safe in the back of the closet, an old model I'd bought years ago, showed scratches around the lock that hadn't been there this morning. They'd tried to open it, but failed. The combination was Ellen's birthday backward, something Jennifer would never guess. I checked the garage next, finding the filing cabinet similarly disturbed, papers slightly out of order despite someone's attempt to put them back correctly. I pulled out my phone and called the police, reporting the break-in with a calmness that surprised me. The officer who took my report said they'd send someone within the hour to dust for fingerprints and document the scene. Then I called Robert, who came over immediately, his face grim when he saw the evidence of intrusion. You think it was them? He asked, though we both knew the answer. Who else would know exactly where to look? Who else would be desperate enough to break into an injured man's home while he was gone? My phone had been silent all day, but as 6 o'clock approached, it began buzzing with increasing frequency. The news segment must have aired. I didn't check the messages, instead turning on the television to see myself on the screen, holding that oversized check and smiling in a way I hadn't smiled since Ellen died. The segment was short but effective, highlighting the $20 million prize and my comments about people showing their true colors. They'd edited it perfectly, making the implications clear without saying anything actionable. That's when the calls started in earnest. Not just from Michael and Jennifer, but from numbers I didn't recognize, distant relatives and old acquaintances suddenly remembering I existed. The phone rang constantly, a digital symphony of desperation and false congratulations. I counted them at first, then stopped when I reached 50. It wasn't until later, when I finally checked the call log out of morbid curiosity, that I saw the final tally from Michael and Jennifer alone. 72 calls between 6 and 11 p.m., not counting the texts that filled my screen with increasingly frantic messages. The police officer had just left, having documented the break-in and taken fingerprints from the door handles and safe, when the doorbell rang at 4:30. Through the peephole, I could see Michael and Jennifer standing on my porch again. But this time, they weren't alone. Jennifer gestured to the family lawyer she had hinted about earlier, who tried to argue Frank had promised the winnings. I opened the door but didn't invite them in, forcing them to stand on the porch where the entire neighborhood could see. The woman from across the street had given up any pretense of gardening and was openly watching from her lawn chair. Robert stood at his fence line, trimming hedges that didn't need trimming. Even the teenage kids from the corner house had stopped their basketball game to observe the drama unfolding at the old man's house. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard, making the whole scene feel like a stage production. "Mr. Patterson," the suit began without preamble, "I'm representing your son and daughter-in-law in this family matter. We need to discuss certain financial obligations and potential claims." He had one of those voices that probably sounded impressive in a courtroom, but came across as pompous on a suburban porch. "Obligations?" I repeated, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "Like the obligation to pick up your father from the hospital after surgery? That kind of obligation?" The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, clearly not fully briefed on all the details. Jennifer's face flushed red, and she started to speak, but I cut her off. "Or perhaps the obligation not to break into someone's home while they're gone. That kind of obligation?" Michael stepped forward, his desperation overriding whatever legal strategy they'd planned. "Dad, we didn't break in. We were concerned about you. The door was open, we just wanted to make sure you were okay." The lie was so transparent it was almost insulting. "We're family. We were worried." Behind him, Jennifer nodded vigorously, her performance even less convincing than his. "Interesting," I said, pulling out my phone, "because I have something you might want to see." I'd discovered the doorbell camera footage while waiting for the police, a feature Robert had helped me set up last year that I'd almost forgotten about. The video was crystal clear, showing Jennifer picking the lock while Michael kept watch, their furtive glances and hurried movements making their intent obvious. But the best part was the audio, which had captured Jennifer's whispered comment from this morning's visit perfectly. "We know where you keep your important papers, Dad." The lawyer's composed expression cracked slightly as I played the video, the sound carrying clearly in the quiet afternoon air. Several neighbors had moved closer, their phones out, recording this second confrontation. That could be interpreted in different ways," the lawyer said weakly, but even he didn't sound convinced. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No," I said firmly. "You wanted to make this about legal matters? Let's make it public. Let's talk about how my son and daughter-in-law left me stranded at a hospital, told me life was better without me, then broke into my home looking for a ticket." I held up my phone, showing the screenshot of their messages again. "Let's talk about how they only remembered I existed when they thought I had money. Your clients might want to worry less about civil suits and more about criminal charges for breaking and entering." The crowd had grown larger now, at least a dozen neighbors forming a loose semicircle around my front yard. Someone was definitely live-streaming this. I could see the telltale sign of someone narrating quietly into their phone. Jennifer looked around wildly, her carefully constructed image crumbling in real time. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "Just give us what we deserve. We're your family." "What do you deserve?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You deserve exactly what you've earned through your actions. Nothing." I looked at Michael, searching for any sign of the boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides, who'd cried when his goldfish died, who'd promised to take care of me after Ellen passed. "I've already made arrangements for the money. It's going to organizations that actually help people in need. Food banks, homeless shelters, medical debt relief. People who understand what it means to struggle and don't abandon those who need them." That's when Michael broke. Really broke. His face crumpled like a paper bag, and he fell to his knees right there on my porch, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, please," he sobbed. "I'll lose everything. My job, my house, everything. Jennifer will leave me. I know she will. This debt will destroy my entire life. Please, I'm your son. Your only son. Doesn't that mean anything?" For a moment, just a moment, I wavered. This was my child, after all, the baby I'd held in the hospital 35 years ago, promising to always protect him. But then I looked at Jennifer, and her mask had slipped completely. She wasn't looking at Michael with concern or love. She was looking at him with disgust, already calculating her exit strategy now that the money was definitively out of reach. "How touching," she said coldly. "But tears won't pay the mortgage, will they?" The revelation seemed to hit Michael like a physical blow. He looked up at his wife, seeing perhaps for the first time what I'd always seen. "You never loved me," he said quietly. "You just thought I'd inherit money someday. From Mom's life insurance, from Dad's eventual—" He couldn't finish the sentence, but we all knew what he meant. Jennifer didn't deny it. She just shrugged, adjusted her purse, and walked away, her heels clicking against the concrete with finality. The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly. "Well, this has been illuminating. Michael, I think we should go." He helped my son to his feet, Michael looking like a puppet with cut strings. As they walked away, Michael turned back once, his eyes meeting mine. "Dad, Jennifer convinced me you were holding us back. She said you were a burden, that we'd be better off without you. I believed her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But apologies couldn't undo abandonment, couldn't erase those messages, couldn't restore the trust that had been shattered." I stood on my porch as the crowd slowly dispersed, neighbors returning to their homes with enough gossip to last months. Robert stayed, standing beside me in comfortable silence. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "Ellen would be proud of you for standing up for yourself." Maybe he was right. Maybe Ellen would understand. But as I watched my son's car disappear down the street, I felt the weight of victory sitting heavy on my chest. That evening, I sat in my living room watching the 11 o'clock replay of my interview. The man on the screen looked confident, almost happy, so different from how I felt now. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. After the confrontation, the calls had stopped. 72 attempts to reach me when they thought I'd share the money, and now, nothing. The silence was enough to answer any lingering doubts about whether I'd made the right choice. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed with a single email from Michael. I read it twice, then deleted it. Some revelations came too late to matter. 1 month later, I stood in the kitchen of my new house, smaller than the old one, but perfectly sized for a man with a healing knee and no illusions about family visits. The apartment was in a senior community on the good side of Riverside, with a pool I used for physical therapy and neighbors who actually checked on each other. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the framed ticket hanging on the wall, a reminder that luck could change in an instant, for better or worse. The money had been distributed exactly as I'd promised. $5 million to the local food bank, enough to keep them operational for years. $3 million to the hospital's fund for patients who couldn't afford treatment. $2 million for homeless services, the rest invested conservatively, providing enough income to live comfortably and continue helping where I could. I'd started volunteering at the hospital, the same one where this all began. 3 days a week, I sat with patients who had no one to pick them up, no family waiting at home. I helped them arrange rides, made sure they had food in their refrigerators, and sometimes just listened to their stories. The volunteer coordinator said I had a gift for understanding what they needed, but it wasn't a gift. It was experience. The ticket in its frame caught the morning light, the numbers still visible despite the creases and wear. Winning $20 million had seemed like incredible luck, but the real fortune was discovering who truly cared about me. If you're wondering what you'd do in my situation, but I hope you never have to find out. Thanks for listening to my story. Before you go, if this touched you in any way, please consider subscribing to this channel and share it with someone who might need to hear it.